Hello everyone, I'm Penrose776 back at it again for another one of these trees banners. It is the presumably desert theme again. Yeah, it says Nabata right there. We guessed that from the silhouettes.
It takes a lot of practice to wield
Okay, that's our fourth Altina. Did they forget that this unit didn't actually really appear in the game she actually appeared in? Like, she's in one single still and a bit of the lore, and that's more or less it? No? Well, I guess she has been very popular, so it's fine, but still very funny that this character has ended up on a fourth alt when she's as underrepresented in her own game as she is. She is a infantry axe unit. It looks like she's dual wielding axes, which makes sense given that she normally dual wields swords. And they are the Arcadian axes. Accelerate special trigger, cooldown count -1. Unit attacks twice, even if foe initiates combat. Can counterattack regardless of foe's range, built in DC. At start of combat, if unit's HP is greater than or equal to 25%. Inflicts attack defense res -X on foe during combat, where X is equal to 20% of unit's res at start of combat plus 5. And also, if foe's attack can trigger foe's special and unit's res is greater than or equal to foe's res plus 5, inflicts special cooldown count +1 on foe before foe's first attack during combat. So, to sum it up, slaying, brave, dual phase brave, distant counter, pretty chunky stat minuses on the foe, and scowl. That's a pretty short list of effects, but they're all very strong effects to have on a weapon. Honestly, I'd say it's kind of funny that this pair of random axes she's picked up for a festival are on par with Ragnell and Alondite. Well, I guess they might not be completely random axes, given that they're Arcadian, but still. Her special, she's coming with a PRF special as well, Arms of the Free. When special triggers, boosts damage by 40% of unit's res and neutralizes foes, reduced damage by X% effects from non-special skills. That part is similar to her old Twin Blades special. At the start of combat, if unit special is ready and unit's res is greater than foe's res, reduces damage from attacks during combat and from area of effect specials by percentage equal to difference between stats times 3, max 30%. It is Twin Blades, but a Vital Astra version of Twin Blades, a res-based Vital Astra version of Twin Blades, because she's Altina, she's not really doing speed nonsense, probably, hopefully, but she is doing res nonsense. Well, one other difference between this and Vital Astra, actually, there is no line in that special saying that it does not count as special damage reduction, meaning this probably counts as special damage reduction, which is a big deal because most teams have some way of piercing non-special damage reduction these days. If you can't do that, then you're in a bit of a tight spot in 2024. In the A slot, attack res finish 4, well, she's got a 2 cooldown special. It gets charged down to 1 cooldown immediately by the slaying in her weapon, so yeah, it's gonna be up most of the time. Finish is a very sensible choice. See some B and C slots here as well, I'm assuming, because that's how they're doing things these days. Yep, there we go. The B slot, attack defense bulwark 4. Foes with range 1 cannot move through spaces adjacent to unit. Foes with range 2 cannot move through spaces within 2 spaces of unit. Does not affect foes with pass skills. Someday they're going to give us a better pass skill, and then I'm really gonna pop off. Unfortunately, today is not that day, or it might be that day. I haven't seen the other 3 units on the banner. Inflicts attack defense -4 on foe, and reduces damage from foe's first attack by 40% during combat, which applies to brave weapons, and restores 7 HP to unit after combat. Okay, so a pretty small addition to Bulwark, going from Bulwark 3 to Bulwark 4. Mainly, the only really super notable thing here is that they've stuck 40% damage reduction on it. But, to be fair, 40% damage reduction is a pretty nice thing to have, so I cannot at all complain about that. And then, in the C slot, we have Times Pulse 4, which, to remind you, special cooldown count -1 at start of turn if it's at its maximum value, which its maximum value is going to be 1, so it's always going to be charged, and it also spirals for 1 after combat as well. So in other words, yep, that finish is always going to be online unless you catch her before the first Times Pulse trigger, and that 30% damage reduction is also always going to be possible. Well, except if she loses the res check, of course, but given that she's probably min-maxed for res pretty heavily based on how her weapon is worded, I imagine that's going to be pretty rare that she loses one of those. Very scary looking units to deal with, and like a lot of Altinas, having DR Piercing Special, having Brave Attacks, having now this funny damage reduction as well, there's a lot of potential builds you can run with her. Like Bulwark 4, very good of course, but as a Null Sea Disrupt 4 unit, she could potentially be a real menace as well. And, well, honestly, a lot of the current B slots are at least considerable, and because DC's in the weapon, you can experiment with A slots as well. Basically, what I'm saying is, hey, we've got a God Axe at last. Not a speed-based God Axe, but a God Axe nonetheless. Well, except for Echidna, but a more meta-looking God Axe. Let's keep running. Being Altina, she normally gets pretty fancy special animations. Facing off against Bramimond here.
End of the road.
Yep. Big damage there. Next up, hello there, Juno? Question mark? Juno! Exclamation mark. A sword flyer is Juno. Her weapon is the Blade of Sands. Accelerates special trigger, cooldown count -1. At start of turn, if units within 2 spaces of an ally, grant speed res +6, bonus doubler, and null panic to unit and allies within 2 spaces of unit for 1 turn. If unit initiates combat or is within 2 spaces of an ally, grants +5 to all stats to unit, neutralizes effects that guarantee foes follow-up attacks, and neutralizes effects that prevent units follow-up attacks, so full NFU, and deals damage equal to 20% of unit speed during combat. Fairly straightforward little weapon there. Probably the most relevant effect is that you're giving out as a buff to everyone within 2 spaces of you. Well, +6 speed res isn't hugely relevant, but bonus doubler, null panic. Those two are a great combination because with bonus doubler, you double your bonuses, and with null panic, you nullify your panic so that you get to keep your bonuses so that you can double them. It all fits together. I especially like seeing skills like this be thrown around because I'm thinking of what I can get up to with Tina, and I'd very much like to steal bonus doubler, thank you very much. But yeah, this is a decent source of bonus doubler support. The other main source of bonus doubler support, for those of you who recall, was always the Ellywoods, Legendary and Young, but they do come with the downside. You've got to run a Beast or Dragon unit, you've got to factor that into your team building, and in addition, they only apply their buffs to one single unit, whereas this is a 2 spaces, so you're spreading it around to everyone on the team potentially. Now, of course, that does bring its own positioning things into consideration, but that's fine. Aside from that, Spectrum plus 5, NFU, 20% of unit speed as damage, and slaying as a combat weapon is functional, but it is nowhere near like meta conquering. This is a support unit primarily who is capable of fighting pretty well if it's completely necessary, but you're going to struggle to break through the toughest meta threats with this one, or tank the toughest meta nukes. That's okay, because bonus doubler. Luna, sure, why not? Guard Bearing 4 is a special B slot even I'm very interested in seeing. Not because it's going to be particularly relevant on Juno herself, but because I just want to see more sources of it in the game. It's a very nice special now, giving you just 60% flat damage reduction on your first combat, and then 30% flat damage reduction on every subsequent combat. That can do a pretty significant amount for the survivability of flying units who previously have kind of struggled with that. And in the C slot, attack defense 04. This gives her the full suite of buffs to benefit from bonus doubler herself. It also is the first time we've seen this specific buff combination for an 04. So hello there, attack defense 04. It's good to see you. Those of you who wanted attack defense 04, this is where you get it now. Pretty cool. Let's keep rolling. Since that's a C slot, we're not seeing any extra nonsense here too, but yeah, that's guard bearing kicking in there, and some pretty chunky damage as well. And you can see her supportive ability. Lovely. Oh, hello, what are you doing here? This is Tormod, who is in special hell. Hello there, Tormod. Tormod is armed with the Nabata Beacon plus inheritable red tome. At start of turn, if units within 2 spaces of an ally, grants unit cannot be slowed by terrain, does not apply to impassable terrain, and desperation to unit for 1 turn. Okay, desperation, very nice status to have, and terrain slowing prevention. You can get up to some pretty funny stuff with that on the right map, so it's a nice little bonus. It's not a huge deal usually, though. If you initiate combat or is within 2 spaces of an ally, grants attack speed defense res plus 4 to unit during combat and deals damage to 10% of unit's attack, excluding area effect specials. I'm not sure why sometimes they decide to give that to AOEs and sometimes they don't, but this time they haven't. Nonetheless, just having the desperation status already is, I think, the most exciting thing about this weapon. Being able to run in stuff with desperation means that even if you get killed on the counterattack, you've still at the very least done all the damage you could do. So it really allows maximizing a unit's attack and speed in builds without having to worry nearly so hard about their defensive stats. A decent red tome option, and it actually does provide at least a somewhat viable alternative to the current lineup of arcane weapons for people who are thinking about building a red tome. Draconic Aurum special is nothing special. Speed res tempo 3 in the B slot, however, that is very nice fodder to be making available, especially with the rise of tempo 4s coming out. I think having a decent stock of speed res tempo 3 fodder could be pretty handy for any infantry mages you're building who might want to shred some damage reduction, and of course tempos are always good for giving you your special on time when you need it. And in C slot we've got speed res gap free, which doesn't particularly excite me. I mean, the gap skills are cool, don't get me wrong, but it's so easy to give out buffs in much simpler ways as opposed to having to rely on this kind of nonsense. Maybe Gap 4 will give us something that is a little more relevant, but for now Gap 3 is kind of really. Still, this is some pretty solid fodder on a 4-star, so I'm not complaining, although again it is very funny that they've sentenced yet another unit to seasonal hell. And see what this torch does. Some kind of fire, I'm assuming. That's pretty cool fire, actually. Oh, we're not done. Because of desperation. Right. And lastly, our duo Harmonic is Igrene and Louise.
Such a wonderful woman. Such fun.
Well, I know some people are gonna love this one, and it looks like some AOE going on here. That's already super exciting. As I've said before, AOE is some of the strongest in the game for breaking current meta units. Let's see what that actually translates to in terms of kit, though. They are armed with the Sandglass Bow. It is a blue bow. Accelerates special trigger, cooldown count -1. Effective against flying foes because it's a bow. At the start of turn 1, grants special cooldown count -2. At the start of turn, if units within 2 spaces of an ally, grants the following to units in infantry and armored allies within 2 spaces. Unit cannot be slowed by terrain, and unit can move 1 extra space for 1 turn. Okay. So basically any infantry or armored allies, for that matter, are just getting free extra movement. You can make an infantry cavalry line? That's a little bit silly. You can make an infantry cavalry line and protect it with trees because it has the whole terrain reduction as well. That is very silly, actually. If you initiate combat or is within 2 spaces of an ally, grants attack speed +6 to unit during combat and deals damage equal to 15% of unit's attack, including when dealing damage with a special triggered before combat, and also when special triggers, deals damage equal to X% of unit's speed, where X is equal to unit's max special cooldown count value times 10 plus 10. Okay, so on your special trigger, assuming you're running an AOE, which is 4 cooldown, reduced to 3 cooldown from your weapon, as a built-in slaying effect, you are getting 15% attack and 40% speed as free damage just on that special. And a further 15% of attack just on any attack in combat as well. That's gonna hit pretty dang hard, I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, we saw it hit pretty dang hard in that intro already, but regardless of that, it's gonna hit pretty dang hard, right? As I said before, special AOE specials are highly meta relevant because a lot of units these days have 25% HP conditions as their requirements for getting off their skills, and AOE damage dealt before combat can completely bypass that by bringing you down below 25%. On top of all that, you've also got to consider that, well, a lot of damage reduction only applies to attacks in combat. There are very few sources of damage reduction that specifically apply to AOEs, and well, Altina had one, but that was 30%. You need a little bit more than 30% to survive this, I suspect. As for the rest of the skill set, we have Flash Sparrow. If unit initiates combat, grants attack speed +7 to unit during combat, and also if unit speed is greater than or equal to flow speed +5. You already know what Flash Sparrow does. Not entirely sure why she has Flash Sparrow, to be completely honest. I guess the idea is as a kind of mini spiral type deal. Like, she's going into combat, she's firing off her AOE special, so it's starting at 3 cooldown once she's actually in combat. She hits the enemy once with the combination of Flash Sparrow and the tempo in the B slot, that's going down to 1. Maybe we can get somewhere? Maybe we can get somewhere with that. We'll see. And she's got tempo 4 in the B slot as well, so even after that AoE, whatever damage reduction they've got left over, she is going to be shredding half of, in addition to the rest of the effects of tempo. Again, I don't think the Sparrow and tempo is super synergistic with her kit, but it'll probably work just fine for the most part. And in the C slot, we've got something new, actually. Pulse Up Blades. Pulse Up. At start of turn, grants attack speed +X to unit for 1 turn, where X is equal to the turn number times 2, max 6, and grants special cooldown count -1 to unit. Okay, so it's like Times Pulse, but instead of requiring you to be at max cooldown, it just pulses every turn. That's pretty ridiculous, even if it was just that, to be honest, because that lets you, on the offense side of things, on anything where you're not super limited for turns, or you're not forced to engage, you can pre-charge basically any special you want by just waiting long enough with Pulse Up. And then it's also giving you attack speed +6, potentially, once you hit turn 3. On turn 1, it's going to be attack speed +2, which still isn't awful, although it is a very funny thing to get, because +2 buffs are actually kind of hard to get your hands on in this game. There's a lot of sources of like +5, +6, +7, but buffs that are smaller than +4 are actually pretty tough in terms of visible buffs to find. It does give you a little bit of a weakness to panic, of course, but I'm sure you have ways around that. All in all, we've had quite a few strong AoE units recently. We had Sonya with the Arcane Caliburnus. We had, was it Sed with, I've forgotten what he had, but with pretending to be a Thracia unit. And we now have this, who I think is stronger than both of them, actually. Let's see some animations, and I expect we're also going to see a harmonic skill here, because this is, after all, a harmonic unit. Yep, there it is. Grants Resonance Blades, Treachery, and Desperation to unit and allies from the same titles as unit. That's a win combat button right there, I'm telling you what. Treachery gives you a whole lot of free damage. Resonance Blades is +4 attack and speed, so not super important, but still handy to have. But Desperation, as I said in Tormod's case, and it's still relevant here, means that you're always going to be getting your maximum damage output no matter what, so long as you're attacking into a unit that doesn't have hardy bearing. So yeah, that harmonized skill should let you win most combats more or less by itself. In fact, I've already seen something pretty similar from Haith as an offense mythic. Her skill, when it's ticked up far enough on the turn counter, grants Treachery and Dual Strike, which effectively does something kind of similar to Desperation, and that lets her cut through things that she really shouldn't be able to cut through. So yeah, again, as usual, your best defense to this harmonized skill is just not letting them use it. Or if they do use it, and you're in a mode where you can't stop them from using it, just stay over the other side of the map until they come to harass you with it. yeah, good luck. Especially since she's got that extra movement as well. She and everyone around her. Yeah, very clearly the unit that they want you to be using off of this banner.
You must win.
Huge AOE, and even against a unit who did not get hit by the AOE, does plenty of damage in combat as well. As for the Tempest Trial unit, we can kind of guess this one. It's Hawkeye. There he is. He was on the silhouettes, and he is in the game as well. So, final analysis going color by color here. Altina is very solid. Red, Juno, decent support if you need specifically those skills for whatever reason. Decent fodder as well. I probably wouldn't use Juno too much. Tormod is just nice to pick up if you are going red, I guess. But again, not super meta breaking, but it is that Harmonic Igrene who is going to be a real menace on both offense and defense, I predict. Because hitting you with big AoEs is a big enough problem already, but the fact that she can do it as part of a line of infantry units, who can jump over trees and who can do all sorts of other ridiculous stuff, well, that's just the cherry on top, isn't it? Let me know who you're pulling for on this banner, if you're pulling at all. I personally am going to be holding off for a little while at least, because we've got a mythic coming up very soon. I think it's mythic anyway. I really want to see who's on that mythic banner before I make a decision which one of these I'm actually going to be spending my orbs on. But you let me know what you're doing. This has been Penros776, and I will see you all for when these units start causing me all sorts of grief on Aether raids. Penros out.